The clans are pretty interesting in that while they are the most technologically advanced, they're always ever seeking to make improvements to their technology in all aspects of the technology, and is why that they stay at the top of their game when it comes to technological capability. And this mech in question that we're going to look at in this episode of the Mech Bay is one such creation due to the fact that they look to seek to improve themselves all the time. What's up, everybody? I'm James. Welcome to Mechanical Mayhem, and welcome back to the Mech Bay. This is where I look at one particular mech per episode, and we just let it bask in the limelight, and we just look at it in all its glory, and we do a lore appreciation dive into that particular chassis. We don't do anything in regards to games or builds. That is the Mech Lab. But here in the Mech Bay, we just appreciate the mechs because mechs are pretty cool, and Battletech, of course, has plenty of them, so we might as well look at them. Now, I do go between clan and Innisphere. I started with clan, so then I do Innisphere, and then I go back to clan, and so on. So, the prior episode was on the Mac Daddy, Granddaddy of them all, the Mackie, which is an Innisphere creation. So now we are looking at a clan mech again, and this would be a light mech. This is the Arctic Cheetah. Now, the Arctic Cheetah is a creation that is all about constantly improving within the clans, because this is a relatively more recent creation that was designed specifically to replace the venerable Mistlings, which is the first mech I went over in Mech Bay. So, with that said, while this mech comes in at 5 tons heavier, it has a lot of technological sophistication, making use of all the latest goodies that they developed over the century of time that the Mistlings has been around. So from the ground up, they can just design a technologically more capable mech, leading to capabilities that are on par, if not excelling, what the Mistlings can do, which is good if you're trying to replace it. Which also means that this is a bit of a workhorse mech as well, considering that's what the Mistlings job role was. And if you're looking to replace that, chances are you're looking to keep that similar job role. So with that said, what I like about the Arctic Cheetah is the fact that the Mistlings is still around. Now, that might sound weird, but hear me out. It's very relatable and kind of realistic in a certain sense that if you have something that technologically is still very capable, the Mistlings is still a very good chassis, and you've had it for a century, that means you have a lot of logistics and supply chain for it that exists without having to make any more. Even though they still do make more Mistlings. The point is that you have all this stuff for the Mistlings, so you might as well still make use of it while you're producing its replacement. So that's why you see them fielded together, and it just makes sense. We see that in real life with things, whether it's military or civilian side. So I've never been in the military, but I just know from different military history that I've seen that is the case. In any case, with that said, let's take a look at this thing. So the Arctic Cheetah is 30 tons, making it 5 tons heavier than the 25-ton Mistlings. It was originally designed and produced by Clan Ice Hellion, but shortly after its production started in 3037, making it, like I said, a pretty recent addition, Clan Smoke Jaguar would conquer its factory and produce it for itself. However, it still would be a chassis that would be amongst other clans, because that tends to be what happens with mech chassis anyway. Now, with that said, its Innisphere designation is Hankyu or Hanyu. I don't know how to pronounce that. You'll see it in the spec sheet, so you can let me know in the comment section. But this is from the Draconis Combine, because when they encountered it in its primary configuration most often, and that name supposedly translates from Japanese to short bow, and they gave it that designation because of the LRMs that the primary configuration has. Now, with that said, Draconis Combine would mistakenly believe that the Arctic Cheetah was made by Smoke Jaguar originally, not knowing of Clan Ice Hellion and its production and development from them, and then Smoke Jaguar conquering it. So that's why you might see reports about it being a Clan Smoke Jaguar design. Technically, no, but they did conquer the factory, so they do make it. They do produce it. They just didn't design it. And this happens amongst the clans. This isn't the only time this has happened. So, with that said, it makes use of all the latest toys. It has ferrofibrous armor, it has endo steel as a chassis, it has an XL engine, and this allows it to have, a faster speed than the lighter Mistlings, and more capabilities because A, it's heavier, so it's got more space, and B, with all the fancy tech, it allows it to save weight to apply that to more omnipod weight, more or less. So let's look at the spec sheet of this thing and see what it's all about. It is the Arctic Cheetah. Designation from the Innosphere is Hankyu or Hanyu. Again, I don't know how to pronounce that. It does weigh in at 30 tons, making it a light mech, but it's not the lightest of the light mechs. That would be 20 tons. And it's not the heaviest. That would be 35. So it is on the heavier side. It's beefy for a light mech, I guess you could say, in terms of weight. Now, what that means is we have a mech that is going to have some decent pod space for equipment, potentially. And it definitely does have that. But before we get there, let's take a look at its top speed, shall we? So, its top speed is definitely very respectable because at 30 tons, it's stomping its way to victory with bipedal locomotion. Remember that. At 129 kilometers per hour, or for actual units, 80 miles an hour. That is very fast, especially for bipedal locomotion on a machine that weighs 30 tons. Doesn't matter if it's metric or standard tons, that's heavy and that's fast. So that's heavy, that's fast, and it's doing it with two legs, not a series of wheels or tracks or anti-grav or jet thrusters or anything like that. So very impressive. Now, the Mistlings has jump jets, so the Arctic Cheetah has to have them too to be a proper replacement, theoretically, and it does. And it has the same jump distance at 180 meters or roughly 590 feet. This makes it very maneuverable. It's able to jump on you, quite literally, and it's able to jump away from you, also quite literally, as well as having really good speed. This thing is going to be hard to shake, and it's going to be hard to keep it pinned down, provided it has room to open it up and jump around and do stuff. So, in terms of maneuverability, lots of cool stuff there. Now, with that said, that's all well and good, but we need some payload, and it definitely has a decent payload to make use of for its Wargear. So let's look at its primary configuration first and foremost. The primary configuration of the Arctic Cheetah consists of two extended range medium lasers, and automatically I like this over the Mistlings because the primary configuration of the Mistlings had no energy equipment. It was all ammunition based. So here we have two extended range medium lasers. To that we have two LRM-5s, long range missile 5s, meaning each one fires a volley of 5 missiles. To that we have a TAG laser, target acquisition gear laser. This paints the target, it doesn't do damage, but it helps missiles out for both you and your allies, your support, or you are their support, but you get my point. And we also have a flamer. Now the flamer is an interesting note because the flamer exists on every configuration of the Arctic Cheetah, making it kind of integral to the chassis, but modular because it's not always in the same spot, theoretically. Not really sure why that is for the Arctic Cheetah, but nevertheless it is, so you have it. Not something to necessarily rely on, but it is good anti-infantry, even though technically I believe nowadays that would be a war crime. And it is also good for, I could be mistaken there, I don't know, part of me makes me feel like that's right, but let me know if I'm wrong. And it's also rather decent at some vehicles, particularly light vehicles, because, well, you know, it is a pretty big flame weapon when you consider it's mounted on a mech and has a pretty good gout of fire. But if there is an armor breach on an enemy mech and the gout of flame is able to get within there, it's really not that bad against structural support of a mech either. It's just not the best for really taking down armor. So with that being said, it's really short range too. I wouldn't rely on it. But to that, the primary configuration also has an ECM suite and an active probe. This means that it's pretty good at electronic countermeasures and electronic warfare itself, making it a really nice front-runner kind of scout for a star, especially a fire support star. Let's say it consists of Mad Dogs and Naga. You could also have a Arctic Cheetah, which would seem out of place until you realize it can get up into the enemy's grill much more undetected than the rest. It can paint it with a tag, and then the missiles can come raining in much more efficiently, and it can lend some weight of fire to that before repositioning to avoid being spot or to avoid the reprisal that will surely happen once a bunch of missiles rain on a target. So that's pretty effective. Now, this is the most common and popular configuration for the Arctic Cheetah amongst Clan Smoke Jaguar and Clan Novacat, so it's no surprise that Draconis Combine would see this configuration the most often, earning it its nickname. Or not so much its nickname, its industry designation. So, with that said, I will go over two alternate configurations because it is an Omnimech after all, meaning it makes use of different Omnipod sets. And this is really where the technology of the Omnimech shine, right? Because this one mech, this actual literal one theoretical mech, can be several different mechs, provided the Omnipod sets are there to refit with in the field, and they can do so relatively quickly with really minimal infrastructure needed to do so. It doesn't need a full-on mech works facility or anything like that. It can just do it in a repair bay, more or less, with some downtime. This allows the Arctic Cheetah to rapidly redeploy for different battlefield roles when needed in between missions. And you don't need to have a whole different designed Arctic Cheetah every time. That's what you do, for example, real quick, move of a tangent, something like the Hunchback. It has its massive AC-20. It also has a variant where it has a bunch of lasers in place of the AC-20, and has a variant amongst some others where it's got like an AC-10 and some other stuff. The thing is, while it has those variants, that's how they're built from factory. So if you want a Hunchback for all these different potential roles, you need literally to have a Hunchback chassis in each configuration. You can't swap it out on the fly. An Omnimech you can. So alternate configuration A can be swapped out or swapped in place of the Prime relatively quickly, and now you have a short range, a little bit of a bruiser. Alternate configuration A, or Alpha, is the preferred popular configuration for Clan Steel Viper, and this has a small pulse laser, that flamer, yet again, right, and two Streak SRM-6s. Now, Streak SRM-6s require lock-on, making them more ammo efficient and accurate, and are a bit of a bruiser type of SRM. SRMs are pretty punchy, SRM-6s being particularly punchy, and Streak SRM-6s can be quite dangerous as well. So, while much more ammunition dependent and confined to that ammunition need, this configuration is going to be able to punch decently hard, all things considered. Now, my personal favorite configuration is alternate configuration C, or Charlie, because it's purely energy based, and I'm all about energy equipment in Battletech. This configuration is also going to excel in urban combat and in other situations where you have dense terrain features that can be a bit of a nuisance to sensors and the like. A, it covers you up, and B, alternate configuration Charlie, just like Prime, has an active probe. Now, it doesn't have an ECM suite like the Prime, but it has an active probe for better scouting. And that is going to be great for both just scouting missions, when you don't need necessarily to have the whole setup of the Prime, as well as in urban terrain where you need to try and get the jump on the enemy, so you can literally get the jump on the enemy with your jump jets. So it has an active probe, and to help it out in this with this active probe, it has a hunter-killer style of configuration where it has 4 extended range medium lasers and 2 medium pulse lasers, as well as its flamer, of course. This is an interesting combination of equipment because typically hunter-killers and / urban combat specificities would utilize something like SRMs, Streak or otherwise, or autocannons. But this is a light mech, you don't want to have all your eggs in one really heavy autocannon with like 5 shots, so this actually makes a lot of sense. It has good maneuverability with its speed and its jumps. It has the active probe to help it out for both scouting and sniffing out enemies in dense packed terrain like urban combat, and it has equipment that will never run out of ammo because it never makes use of ammo. They're energy-based equipment, meaning it can last in the field as long as it takes to get the job done, and never need to be resupplied for ammunition at the very least, right? So that is very handy, meaning it can operate without a supply chain if needed and never really lose out in its capabilities, provided it doesn't take damage enough to lose components. This can make it quite a danger for hit and run tactics as well, because it'll never lose its efficiency in doing those hit and runs, provided again it doesn't lose any components. So that's a rather punchy and heat spicy light mech configuration, and it's all energy equipment, which I always approve of. And there are other configurations as well for the Arctic Cheetah. I just want to go over those two because A, alternate configuration A, or Charlie, or not Charlie, or Alpha, is another clan's primary way of using it, which is interesting. And C just happens to be, or Charlie happens to be my favorite configuration of the thing. So what are your thoughts on the Arctic Cheetah? It's 5 tons heavier, so typically the mindset is if it's heavier, it must be better, or it better have improvements. And considering the job role is looking to basically take over from the Mistlings, being a workhorse, it does need to have similar, if not outright the same or better, maneuvering characteristics, and it has the same jump but a faster running speed. It needs to have some decent punchiness to it in some capacity, and it does in several configurations. And it does have the active probe and the ECM suite in its primary configuration to be a really good front-ranging scout mech, and that target acquisition gear is going to make it really handy with heavier mechs that it's a part of that are all about fire support, because once it paints a target, it's going to be a bad day for that target. Now, one thing I will say, since it is meant to replace the Mistlings, is that for a lot of people, video game-wise, it's more or less literally going to, right? MechWarrior 5 clans, we have 1 Mistlings, because it's the lightest mech, right? So they give us 1. I'm not sure if that's why, but we just have 1. And from the second mission forward, our drop weight goes up. Our drop limit for our star, meaning we can start replacing mechs. And the drop limit is going to go up, meaning you can keep the Mistlings around and replace something else with something heavier, or you can replace the Mistlings with something heavier. So most people tend to replace the Mistlings nearly right away. And therefore, video game wise, you don't really get to see it much, or light mechs in general that much, because the moment we have access to higher weights, the moment we just upgrade to that as soon as we can and never look back. But in terms of lore, novels, the miniature game, and even RPGs, light mechs can be quite a nuisance and quite dangerous. So lore-wise, this is a very capable light mech, and the only way I see it as having a negative to the Mistlings personally is in being 5 tons heavier, because if for some reason 2 Star Commanders are making a bid to land on a planet and be the beachhead or whatever, or do something, or take an objective, and it comes down to weight, I might try to outbid you by removing a 30-ton mech for a 25-ton mech. Doesn't matter which one it is, right? And in this case, that could be removing the Arctic Cheetah from my star and replacing with a Mistlings for my star to get me the bid. That's the only way I really see the Arctic Cheetah as being somewhat of a negative in terms of being an overall improvement on the Mistlings. I still like the Mistlings. I think it looks really cool. I think the Arctic Cheetah looks really cool. But it is 5 tons heavier, so yeah, it better have a better arsenal or whatever else. But it also means that could be its Achilles heel when it comes to being in a bid war. But that's a really minutia specific thing. So all in all, both are cool, but I think the Arctic Cheetah is an overall improvement myself, lore-wise, of course. In video game-wise, there's plenty of really cool builds for both, so it really doesn't matter. But what are your thoughts? Share them in the comment section. What do you think about the Arctic Cheetah? Do you think it's a worthy replacement for the Mistlings, or are you glad that the Mistlings pretty much still sticks around? In any case, they're both light mechs, so they're not something super crazy to write home about. I get it, but still, they're cool nonetheless. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to check this out. Of course, do all the algorithm type stuff of liking and thumbs up stuff or whatever, and subscribing if you wish. If not, maybe on another one, I'll be here. And let me know your thoughts. If you have any questions, comments, or requests for the Mech Bay, let me know in the comment section, and I'll try and accommodate them when I can. Until next time, take care.